We can go ahead and get started. Well, thank you everybody for joining our Brunch and Learn today. Today we're going to be speaking about Microsoft Dynamics 365 project operations. We're going to talk about the why, the rationalization. We're going to get into some details about the features as well, specifically around the integration and the components regarding the integration that make it necessary, as well as talking about some of the benefits. And this really also hits home with Arbella because what we're going to find is that this is something we're also doing internally. So just a quick housekeeping item. So my name is Corey Bakhtiary. I'm the Director of Programs and Product Management at Arbella. And along with me presenting today, we have John Rastia. He is the Global Director of Innovation at Arbella. John, you want to say hi real quick?
Yep, thank you everybody. This is John Rastia.
Great, thank you, John. Okay, this is what we're going to be planning on covering during our meeting today. We're going to quickly visit the Microsoft ecosystem to put project operations in some context within the broader landscape. What we'll do is we'll also talk a little bit about that rationalization. Why are we speaking of project operations? Why now? We'll talk about what in some detail is actually project operations. We'll talk about how there are different flavors, right? Different deployment options as well. We'll talk about also some really key features within the scope of the project operations solution. We'll do a demo on one or two areas. We'll do a revisit of some of the components. We'll really break down the benefits. And we'll talk about the fact that this is something that is ingrained within the Arbella culture, and that is we like to drink our own champagne. And so this is something we're also doing internally. And of course, we'll have some time at the end for any types of questions that may arise through the course of this meeting. So a quick point on the questions, just because of GoToWebinar, you will not be unmuted to ask your question via audio. So if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. And as long as you put it in the chat at the time you have your question, it'll be memorialized, it'll be saved there. So we can make sure that we address it when it's appropriate. So a quick recap. So this may be a familiar slide to some of you. One thing that I want to specifically call out is that the Microsoft ecosystem is one of the most robust ecosystems in the cloud computing space. When we talk about the Microsoft ecosystem, we are not only talking about business applications like Dynamics 365 you see in the middle. What we're talking about as well is Microsoft 365. These are your productivity tools. I would even consider Power Platform to be really the next generation of productivity tools, as well as it enables your citizen developers to build out more discrete solutions to specific use cases. But in addition to that, especially in the world of cybersecurity threats, Microsoft has invested a lot into its own identity, security, and compliance practices and products as well. So when we want to talk about things like authentication or authorization, Microsoft is a industry leader with respect to that. And then all of these different components really are at your fingertips when it comes to leveraging them in order to make your business or your personal life more productive, opening up new avenues of creativity as well. And you really will be able to do that with some Azure services. And we'll talk about one that really plays into project operations. So one of the things that I like to always do when we talk about anything, I like to take a step back to say, so what? Why are we talking about project operations? So project operations is for organizations that engage in project-based services, right? So these are your professional service organizations, consulting organizations, engineering organizations as well, pharmaceutical, really where a large part of the cost and really at the end of the day, your main product is in the knowledge industry, right? So these are people that you're relying on, right? So in order to deliver project-based services, what happens is there are a lot of different systems of record. So we could talk about there are different tools for project management, there are different tools for sales, there are different tools for accounting. And oftentimes still in this era, we're finding that there are different systems, and each entity, line of business, even within maybe, let's say, a delivery organization, has its own systems, has its own processes, and has its own data silo, right? And this is impacting the overall success of an organization. Project team members also need to be able to collaborate, especially in the era of increasingly remote work, to improve quality of that same work. Team members also need visibility across operations to make more informed, better decisions on a day-to-day basis. Workforce management optimization is key, especially when it comes to increasing utilization and identifying folks on the bench to make them more productive. Furthermore, comprehensive financial management systems are needed to support accounting needs associated with things like revenue recognition within the professional services world. Now, we'll talk a little bit about what is project operations. Now, project operations is about, a year or so old. One of the things that comes up pretty often is this a new product? The answer to is this a new product is both yes and no. And I know that sounds like maybe a slippery response, but the reason why it's yes and no is because Microsoft has developed an extension and integration platform for these three main lines of products that we see here. And now they're interoperable. And now what's happening is they are now labeling the interoperation of these three core components of your front office, which is Dynamics 365 PSA, your project and work management for delivery system, or Microsoft Project, and then also your back office, which is your ERP typically, all together within a templated deployment approach. Now, not all deployments include all these components, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but in a general sense, project operations is both a new product and not a new product, because it's leveraging products that you already are familiar with, but in addition to that, it's making them interoperable in a more seamless fashion. Who is this best used for? I mentioned this a little bit earlier, for project service-based organizations, right? So it could also be for project manufacturing-based organizations, but today we're going to be spending more focus on the project service-based side of things. What's a positive change as a result of making this all interoperable? You've now talking on the same page. We've got one source of truth. And then along with this conversation typically is a dialogue around maturity. How mature is it? I will say that this is something that Arbella is actively implementing internally. We have gone through proof of concepts and we have direct access to the product engineering team. And it is an evolving, and there are components that are evolving, and there will be features added, but it is a stable platform, and it is something that lots of organizations have already adopted within the Microsoft ecosystem. So one of the things I want to mention here is that unlike other products in the Dynamics business application space, project operations comes with different type of deployments, right? So these are different ways to leverage the same overarching workloads, but sometimes in different formats, different applications that support the different components of the workloads. So there's three deployment options. There's a light deployment option, which essentially takes you from sales to deal management, quoting, estimating, project planning, resourcing, work management, and then also, of course, pro forma invoicing. This is the light deployment. It focuses mostly on the CE platform. And then you've got your resource-based scenarios. Your resource-based scenarios are going to be for those project service-based organizations. And this includes an additional component around project invoicing, cash application, revenue recognition, other type of project accounting components as well. And then you've got your stocked stocked production order-based scenario. So this is more for those organizations that do more inventory-based project, not services, but revenue generation, right? So project-based manufacturing, for example. Now, one of the components behind the upgrade path for project operations is that typically, depending on your specific use case, there is an upgrade path for those organizations that are already on finance and operations, that are already on a CRM or PSA, or that are on both, right? And there's some exciting news coming out at the end of the year around an upgrade tool that will enable that to be the case. And just real quick, just to highlight some components here, it is a more visual look at the 3 different deployment scenarios, right? The light one is at the top, so it mostly focuses on CE, takes you up to a performer invoice. But the second one, which is the one we're going to be spending most of our time talking about, has both CE and F&O components. And so that's why the integration I mentioned a little bit earlier is going to become quite important. And then, of course, you've got your inventory-based scenarios. Now, let's go ahead and let's talk about some features of note. There's a lot of different features in both the PSA side, or the CE platform PSA side, as well as on the D365 Finance or ERP side that already exist, but there's some things that I really want to maybe drill down into a little bit more so, because I think this could provide some additional context. The first thing is resource management. So resource management, for example, for those that might be on finance and supply chain or finance and operations currently and using project accounting, this is now in the second deployment option for project operations. This and some of the other components, including project management, are now migrating to the PSA or CE platform, okay? One of the things that's pretty great about the resource management components is that you've got additional resourcing capabilities, right? In addition to having some out-of-box schedule board views, right, in terms of who's scheduled, who's available, what's their capacity, you're also able to look at things from a utilization perspective. How close are they to meeting their chargeability goals, for example? Additionally, when it comes to resource management, you've got some features around being able to self-serve requests for resourcing if you were, for example, a project manager. And then you can enable a fulfillment of that resource request if you were a resource manager. So now we've added some extra functionality to avoid more manual activities that might be done outside of the system when it comes to, hey, I would like a resource of this specific type. Now it actually shows up in their queue. Project management. When it comes to project management, one of the things that's pretty neat is that you've got some project for the web or Microsoft project capabilities embedded within the application. So things like setting up estimates and quotes based on a work breakdown structure at that project level is supported, right? So maybe you do your planning delivery and you've broken out maybe a template for projects, right? You're going to be able to estimate a quote based on that specific project. You're going to be able to schedule all within, just like you would in Microsoft Project, specific resources for specific tasks, in addition to generic resources. You're also going to be able to do task management, again, in the same Microsoft Project interface that you may already be using or are already used to. So this includes, opening up different tasks, managing dependencies of tasks, closing out tasks as well. And then there's also different views to look at the workload associated with it, right? So you've got your grid, you've got your timeline like I'm showing here, and then you've also got your board-based view where you can do things like Kanban type of visualizations for your project-based activities. Additionally, you've got collaboration. So one of the neat features behind now having this interoperability between your front, back office, and your project and work management tools is now you've got the ability to do your project-based task management for team members within Microsoft Teams. That's right, you're already probably using Microsoft Teams, right? You're gonna be able to embed your projects that you've created within the Dynamics Project Operations platform, within Teams, and you're gonna be able to expose that for collaboration within the platform people are already using for collaboration, right? And the functionality is gonna be consistent, right? Around assigning resources, setting up dependencies and tasks, and you can also manage security around this as well. But it's pretty neat because now you're going to be enabling folks to use the system they're already using for project-based collaboration. Some more features to note: expense management. In addition to expense management, also in addition to time entry, expense management has been optimized within the project operations solution. There's a new workspace for both and mobile app. And the intention behind having these is that now you've got a more intuitive user interface in terms of being able to enter your time and expenses, but it's also more responsive, right? So this will reduce potential frustration. This will, lessen any type of issue associated with adopting a new platform because it's going to be more modern in terms of its responsiveness, its performance, and in terms of its user interface. Also, you have the ability to leverage optical character recognition to basically scan receipts, in this case, right, for an expense, for entry of that expense, right? So here's an example of, a receipt that you might get when you go and grab some coffee for perhaps while you might be working on a project, right? And what you're going to be able to do is leveraging the optical character recognition feature, which is derived from an Azure cognitive service, hence the whole Microsoft ecosystem. You're going to be able to easily capture values that are relevant for that expense entry. So for example, date, time of transaction, perhaps you've got amount, and then vendor just being demonstrated here. And then you're going to be able to either match or reconcile that against an existing expense or create a brand new expense. Furthermore, one of the other interesting things, especially within our specific deployment option, is around the integration. Microsoft has released a, and it's not new, but it is a very, it is a very neat integration tool that comes with templates. It's called Dual Write. Basically, what happens is this integrates the data management component of finance, D365 finance and supply chain, and it integrates that with the CDS environment, which is connected to your PSA solution or your dynamic CE model-driven apps, right? For example, your Canvas apps. So they're integrated and it comes with templates, right? So there's a project operations template, there's a finance-related template, and it's fairly straightforward to configure. It's also extendable to your own needs. For example, if you've got customizations as well. It is a real-time sync, very neat. It's also bi-directional, but when it is bi-directional, you have to take into account what is your master record, right? If there is a conflict between your PSA solution and your finance solution, which one, if there is a conflict, will supersede or trump the other, right? So that will need to be set up, and there are recommendations. And you can do this for master data, so your customers, vendors, projects. You can do this for setup data, customer groups, for example, contract information, or contract setup information, and for transactions. So it includes also for example, your timesheet lines, right? Your invoiceable timesheet lines. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and do a little demonstration. And what we're going to demonstrate for you is that integration. We're going to talk a little bit about project planning, resource management, but focus more on the project and work management side of the sales to cash process for project service-based organizations. We're going to go into invoicing, and then we'll show you the integration between the PSA and then the D365 finance solution. And then we'll show you some more of the financial components with respect to cash application as well as revenue recognition. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to my colleague, John Rastia, to take it away and talk a little bit about the planning, resourcing, and project and work management.
Great. Thank you, Corey, for that great overview. And now I'm going to take a little bit deeper, dive into some of the applications that Corey just explained to you. So right now, I'm actually already logged in into the Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement Project Operations module, which gives different users, different, access to different records, projects, and different actions that they can do. I've logged on as one of the project managers of this, so we can kind of show you what that is. So I've already logged into the application. Like I mentioned, I am already looking at one of my projects. So let me kind of walk you through this a little bit. So we have some base information, obviously, about the project. We give unique identifiers for it. We can give it a name. We also have what customer and templates. A lot of these calendar templates can be very, very useful because this is all the working hours of a project. When this particular field is changed, the entire schedule is actually recalculated. So if we have certain projects that that you run on a regular basis, you can use it as a template, and it sets a lot of that scheduling up for you. We've got multiple scheduling modes that we can do, and this one we kind of did a fixed duration on it. And then we can also do the contracting unit. And here, this is where we can actually assign the company or division that's primarily responsible for the delivery of the work and services to this particular customer. And then we've got the project manager here. We got Corey set up there. So as part of the other part of this presentation, when I walk through, Corey's going to take it up from a PM perspective, and you're going to see some additional feature functionality there. That's only assigned to the project manager who's actually doing the work. Then of course we've got some of our estimated field dates, such as the start date. That when the project will begin, and when this is actually updated, any tasks on the project will move proportionately with the starts new date. Okay, the finish date, of course, we have on here when it's scheduled to end. What's the effort, estimated effort and time of the project. We can also start tracking the estimated labor costs. So when the labor costs are added to the project, this field, kind of like turns no longer editable, as you can kind of see here. It's kind of locked down from us, as well as the estimated expenses. Again, once everything's locked into here and we understand what those are, this does not become editable going forward. Of course, then we've got all of our actual, our project dates, the date that the project's going to start, when it's going to, finish. And again, we've got some actuals here that automatically calculate when different users are adding either their time or expenses to the project. Okay, we have some additional information here, some visuals here, so we can actually take a look at our schedule performance based upon our effort and versus actually completed hours and how we're scaling to them. Then we can actually look at it by each individual task. So we can actually look at it from a scaled labor cost as shown here, and how the actuals are actually coming in once a resources enters time, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Other thing to note on here that we have access to are all the different tasks. And this particular schedule communicates what work must be completed, which resources will do the work, and the timeline in which the work must be completed. The schedule reflects all the work associated with delivering the project on time. Also in here, we can also see a breakdown of the work into manageable tasks, estimating the time that's required to do each task, We can also set dependencies and durations. So as you can kind of see here, just a very simple, sample. We've got, multiple different stages here. Then we have some dependencies working on each other. And, when we actually assigned it to, what's the duration? I have different ways of looking at this. I can look at it from a bucket perspective of what's actually being, completed and done. Looking at it from this perspective, I can also see the timeline. So let me just kind of back this up just a little bit. And by pulling it back here, I can kind of look at when we started things, and you can see a better representation of what the dependencies are and how this really works out in a timeline. Okay. Again, the resource assignments here just really kind of now just kind of helps and understands the different resources that we're using and how they're being allocated here. So you can kind of see that I've got a handful of different resources that are working on this project, and I can see what tasks they have been assigned to. Okay, and when I kind of scroll across here, I can see also when these tasks had their dates associated to them and so on and so forth. And I can move any one of these timelines out by looking at it from a week, a month, a year, and so on and so forth. The reconciliation view shows the project manager's places where resource bookings and assignments don't necessarily agree or line up. Bookings are the hard or soft allocation of resources to a project. Hard bookings consume a resource's capacity, and each one of those resources does have like a full capacity limitation that are set at each one of them. And so the bookings represent the organization's concepts for teams so that they can understand how resources will be engaged across various projects. Okay, so unlike bookings, assignments are the committed of resources to project tasks in the project schedule. The resources can be named, or generic. When a resource requirement is derived from the project task assignments, the project operation uses those efforts of the resources assignment to build the contours of the resource requirement details as shown here. And again, we can kind of see what's been, where's the booking shortage and where they're being accessed here. Creating an estimate for the project is considered, a best practice because you can build bottom-up detailed estimates for labor or time and expenses on each task in the project plan. You can then use this detailed estimate to create estimates for each quote line and build a more creditable quote for the customer. So again, when you import any one of these that we can assign to this, it'll build us, a really good idea as to what the total costs or estimated costs are going to be for this particular project. So we can share that with the customer. On the effort tracking tab, we can, track the progress of tasks in the schedule by comparing the actual effort hours spent on the tasks to the tasks planned effort hours. We also use the following formulas, to show progress percentage. So we, look at that information here. We look at effort remaining, the percent complete, and so on and so forth. And then finally here, along with some additional information, I want to kind of end it up here and really kind of talk about the time entry. So again, any time that's been actually allocated to this particular project is actually shown here and what particular status it's in. So in this particular part of the presentation, what I want to show you is how a resource would actually enter time against one of these projects. Okay, so they can either go to their app on their phone or go to a time entry screen, come into here, and they can kind of see all their different time entries that they've entered in here. And once the user actually clicks on new, it's going to default some information. Obviously, if they need to default it to today's date, if they need to, in this case, let's say I was working on something yesterday, I had, maybe 2 hours of work yesterday. It is work, and I guess we can actually look at this as absence, vacation, overtime. We can actually put in different types here that we want to TrockerCast. Then we also, because I'm, and this is going to look at all the different projects that I'm actually kind of working on at this particular time. So you can kind of see here, this is the project that we were just looking at here. So again, this automatically filters in all the projects I'm available and have been, put as a resource on. so I don't have to search through everything throughout the company. And then once I pick that project, what task am I actually putting, this time against? So what this also does is it also filters only the tasks that I've been assigned to. So I can't accidentally put time to something that, that I've been assigned to. So I'm going to put this particular 2 hours in planning, and I can add some different information here if I needed to. But in this case, I'm just going to say save and close. So it's very simple to use. I mean, using that particular view, I can easily get through and enter my time very, very, very quickly. What I can also do here is once that's particularly done, I can continue to add. I can edit it if I needed to, and that'll kind of pull it back up. If I do have one here that I'm actually have sent as approved and pending, I can actually recall it and make some edits if I have that. And also as a really great resource, I'm actually able to connect this to my Exchange Outlook, and it can look at appointments that are pertaining to this project and automatically take those appointments in Exchange that's related to this project and put that in here for me automatically, really simplifying the time that I've got to put in my time here. Well, let's take a look at this one here. I've got it as a draft. Once I have this as a draft, I just simply say submit. This is going to go ahead and process it for the project manager to pick up and take their next steps into approving this and moving it on to invoicing. Okay, so we kind of took a look at that. We looked at the different projects, time entry, and other various information. So with that, Corey's going to go ahead and take it over right now, and he's going to play the role of the project manager actually going into the system and now approving this time and moving it through the system where it's actually going to get invoiced. Okay, Corey, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, John. Much appreciated. All right, so now I am showing what would be essentially more of a project manager's persona. Where we are is we're in the projects module, where the project manager would typically live. And what we're going to do is we're going to go take a look at what type of approval items there are, right? Like in other areas, there are different types of approvals, right? For materials, expense entries, as well as absences and vacations as well. But what we've just gone ahead and seen is we just saw that John went ahead and put in some time against the PP1 Adventure Works professional services project. You can get into some detail about what the specific time entry was. If John included any detailed description about the work item that was specifically provided, but I can see the specific project task. I can go to the project task and check on its ETC based on cost or effort, as well as the role that he put his time against. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to say this is all approved. He's put in a good amount of effort within those 2 hours. We're going to go ahead and approve it. We can also reject the time and ask for any types of corrections in addition to maybe changing the project task, maybe adding more details perhaps. And what we went ahead and did is just demonstrated that the approval process, very easy. This is one of the neat things, especially when it comes to a comparison with respect to project accounting and D365 finance, that you can begin to see the responsiveness of the CE platform, right? Now, from a project manager's perspective, maybe depending on your specific organization, maybe this would be the end of the project manager's role. But typically then the next part is we're going to start talking about invoicing, right? So there's a concept within the project operations around billing milestones, right? So you can set up fixed price projects where you have every certain amount of periodicity, you will bill a certain amount, right? It could be configured according to your project contract. You could also be billing on a more time and material basis, right? So because the project we were working on was a time and material project, what we're going to come into is we're going to go and take a look at our billing backlog, right? These are all of the different billable entries within the system, time or expense, that are ready to be billed. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take a look at the John's specific billable. We're going to go ahead and confirm, of course. Typically, this might be done by maybe a project accountant. This might be done by maybe a project assistant or project coordinator, or maybe even by the project manager themselves. Say that we're ready to invoice this, and you can specify which items are ready to invoice. Just like you can approve and reject at a line level, and just like John could go ahead and enter time at an individual line level, the amount of flexibility of being able to work at the lines and not having to work across the headers is really powerful, because this enables you to go ahead and provide, if needed, time entries for specific activities on an on-demand basis, not have to wait for maybe a period to end, like a week. So what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and specify that these indeed are ready to invoice. Let's make sure. So it says it's ready to invoice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at our project contract. So this is where we're going to actually generate the invoice. This might be where maybe someone who's more related to finance comes into play. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to specify the project that we were working on, and we're going to go ahead and create a project invoice. It's going to include all of the different billable backlog items that have been approved for invoicing, right? That was the step that we did before. So now it's in batch, it's going to go ahead and generate that invoice for us. And what we're going to do here is we're going to give it a little bit while it goes ahead and creates that invoice for us. So we see here, we've got that invoice, we've got the 2 hours, it was billed at $150 rate, which again, you can also get into details at that line level if you would like. And what we're going to go ahead and do is just check it, confirm some of those details, right? So we see that the exact amount, you see how much has been billed against the project to date. If we do want to get back into the line, we can hop back into there. Any other related information will be included here. And then we'll go ahead and confirm this. Now this is going to basically essentially set this up so that the pro forma invoice, in this case, is now ready to go into the proper finances hands, right? Now, what's going to happen here, and this is really one of the things that is pretty significant, this is why we were demonstrating this, is this integration into a fully functional, comprehensive enterprise resource planning system, your D365 finance, right? So what's happening on the back end is DualWrite is going to go ahead and push this information into finance and operations. What we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and take a look at the project operations integration journal. Okay, now this is where things from a staging perspective will now reside. So this is pretty significant because while, yes, the data does get pushed into finance and operations, there is an additional checkpoint here. Anything that I've showed to date can be put on batch as well. So we can automatically push this straight into a proper project invoice proposal. But you're going to be able to review those lines as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take a look at the period. We're going to take a look at, we're going to go take a look at the lines. All right, so we see a couple lines. According to John, you can see the sales amount and you can see the cost, right? So this is one thing that's also really significant about the interoperability of the CE and the F&O platforms. You're going to be able to measure profitability of projects. You're going to be able to quote and then determine what type of resourcing you want on specific projects, also taking into account cost. Now, of course, there might be some organizational reasons why you may not want to surface this information. That's not John's real cost, by the way. But and you can mask it, you can hide it, you can restrict it through security or other forms as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do is let's just return back to the header level. Let's go ahead and post this. Basically, what's going to happen now is now we've reviewed this. Now we've got some confirmation. This is ready to go into a proper project invoice proposal within the ERP. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take a look at the project invoice proposals. So what we see here is now an open invoice with the invoice amount, and just make sure we refresh real quick. Yep. And this is now your typical project accounting interface. So from here, this is where you're going to be able to take on your typical project accounting activities if you're familiar with the project accounting components of the D365 finance, right? So from here on out, you know, all else for the most part applies. The only thing that is a little bit different is that if you want to do any corrections or adjustments, that's still, because that does happen at the initial invoice level, that would still be done within CE. But like things that are more like credit notes and stuff like that, that can also happen within finance, the core finance product itself. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, yes, you can generate the invoice, view it, get into the details like we've shown, but we're going to go ahead and just post this in the interest of moving forward. And the posting of this invoice proposal is going to go ahead and create a proper project invoice. The proper project invoice is actually what's going to go ahead and be the document that you provide to the customer. This, again, you can print it, send it in any format. What we do at Arbella is we have it automatically sent over a secure channel. Maybe it's an email, things like that. And you're going to be able to also see the print screen, again, based on your configuration. This is another validation that this is happening as expected. Now, typically in your project accounting processes, you know, what you would do at this point is you can go ahead, and we'll wait for that to come back. Go ahead and we'll talk about, you know, cash application, right? So for example, if you want to go ahead and do your AR payment journal to receive cash against that specific invoice, everything else will be the same. So when it comes down to those activities, you know, I mean, you can do your AR payment journal, you can go into your general journal, you can hop in. Let's go into this one. Let's go into this one. And what we're going to be able to do here is we're going to be able to settle this transaction, let's say, against those specific invoices associated with that account. And it's not going to do it. It's different, but we will go ahead and change and update the journal amount. And then from here on out, what you're going to be able to do is, now that you've settled that, you're going to be able to post your journal entry for cash application in the AR payment journal. So that is the kind of the core integration components of the project service-based deployment with an ERP component of the sales to cash process flow. Now, I just want to give you a quick visual here. Now, we talked a lot about what that includes, but this is going to help bring it home to a little bit more extent, I would hope. What project operations provides from a revenue process cycle, your revenue process cycle is going to be these following workloads: your sales or deal management, from your opportunity quoting, project contract, and generation of billing milestones, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Then your project planning, where you can make your project, and you can even feed your project into your quoting process. Build out your tasks, activities, dependencies to make a project plan. Talked about resourcing. You can do resourcing at a generic level. You can do it at a named resource level. It's going to generate schedules for your resources, right? You're going to get visibility into their utilization. We demonstrated more specifically time entry. Went through approval, talked about the billing backlog, created that pro forma invoice. Now, that's where, again, where you can make your adjustments or corrections. And then leveraging the robustness of a Power Platform based model driven app responsiveness, capabilities, extendability system for the more dynamic engagement with sales and projects and work folks. Now we're going to move into your finance system, where you've got a lot more functionality to do the different types of project accounting activities that would be required for most organizations. And again, what you can see here is dual write kind of encompasses all of this. Now, not all of the data flows are shown. It would be busier than it is right now. And remember, this is really only in the context of the sales to cash or revenue process, right? This does not include expenditures, or procurement. This is, because it is also an ERP, there's also HR. There's other processes included within project operations, but this is really where the fundamental change really resides across this versus other products. So a quick recap. When we're talking about project operations for resource non-stocks scenarios, right? Project service-based organizations. We're talking about D365 project operations. This is its model-driven app based on the Power Platform or CE platform that John and myself demonstrated. Then we went into D365 Finance, where you've got a fully functional ERP. What that means is you've got AP capabilities, you've got your HR components, right? You've got asset management, if that's something that you want to include. All of those modules that you might be familiar with within D365 Finance are still going to be there. It is finance, it's not supply chain. So when we talk about this, as Microsoft does begin to move down the path of splitting out finance and supply chain from a technical component, there will be more details to come. But we're calling it is based on the D365 Finance SKU. Things like optical character recognition included, right? A connection to Azure Cognitive Services for OCR in the system. It's a feature you turn on. Project for the web embedded within project operations. I showed you something about Teams as well. For the Teams operability, I showed a screenshot for Teams earlier, but Teams will still require its own separate license. And if you would like any more licensing information, please feel free to reach out to Arbella, and we'll be happy to provide you any additional information. But typically the project operations SKU, we're looking at $120 per user per month. Some of the benefits, all right? Now, we talked a little bit about the benefits as we were going through this, but demand planning, huge, right? When we talk about the interoperability from sales to finance, right? Finances and operations are going to be able to have insight into what is selling and what do we need to prepare to deliver, right? It's going to be big when it comes to making customers happy and delivering on time. Actuals reporting. Maybe somebody in sales wants to know the status from a project billing perspective. What are the actuals? How much of the revenue, how much of the expected revenue has been consumed on this project? Are we going to set up a trigger to maybe talk about creating a change order if maybe we are not completing the same rate as we are consuming hours? We're not completing tasks at the same rate as we're consuming hours. Self-serve in a single system. Skills management, a little bit about HR, a little bit about workforce utilization, one source of truth. You don't have to keep going to different practice leads, line managers to understand someone's skills or proficiency level within that skill set. This is going to enable you to be more agile when it comes to providing and effectively timing resourcing. Time and expense entry, we talked about improved user experience, talked about OCR, talked about responsive user interface, mobile applications. You got your enterprise ERP, finance is going to be happy. You've got things like revenue recognition, you're going to be able to leverage in a full-fledged manner. And lastly, you've got your collaboration. Collaboration using the products you're already familiar with so that team members can more effectively work on delivering a project. And what do you know? Arbella is doing it too. So one of the things that we pride ourselves at Arbella is we like to drink our own champagne. This is just giving you a little bit of context that this is something that we are implementing ourselves. We have sales, we have customer service, we have project accounting, we have project management, work management, time, expense entries. And we've been doing this within the Dynamics ecosystem. We are moving to project operations ourselves. And it's been an extremely exciting experience for all those involved. Just a cute note is we are doing what we do for our customers, right? So we are going through the same type of questions, the same type of decision making that you would be going through. And we're more than happy to get into more detail about our experience with this moving forward. Now, we can just quickly just say, hey, you know what? This is all part of a larger project operations maturity journey. Moving away from, even if you're doing paper-based activities, but even moving away from your more simple to-do planner to project and Microsoft project operations. Get that level of comprehensivity, get that level of detail to enable your business to take it to the next level if you're a project service-based organization. So with that said, I'll go ahead and ask if there are any questions. I don't know, or maybe John, if you've got maybe a question.
Yeah, let me just make just a quick question to you, Corey. I mean, you've been very involved with the setting up the integration, the dual write, as you mentioned. Just kind of maybe how long did it take you to set up just the basic integrations that we showed here today?
Actually, I mean, if I were to kind of give you a comprehensive number, the integration specifically within 4 hours. And I think one of the things to really kind of note there is this was also part of an R&D exercise, right? Arbella, we've documented this process. We've got this down pretty well. With focus and with someone who's done this a lot, I would expect it to go down even further. But that's a great question, and it's one that does come up fairly often, but it is something that is very manageable to do. Now, of course, you've got customizations, there might be other components, but that's the beauty of the template for dual write that Microsoft provides, and Arbella is very familiar with.
Wow, so less than a day, you're having two systems talk to each other. That's fantastic. And based upon what we demoed today, was there any customization that was done to some of the UIs?
Nope, no customization. This was, for the most part, a very much out of box, to use a cliche, setup, right? Although I will have to say, between you and me, John, we probably had a little bit of an itchy trigger finger to do things, but I mean, this is the benefit of leveraging the responsiveness platform of Power Platform Dynamic CE. Right? There's going to be a lot of customizable or extendable components, but just the power of what you've seen. Maybe there are some areas where you would be interested in doing some things, but I'm telling you, it's very much optimized at this point.
Awesome. And I see we've got a question here that came through, and the question is, could we have a bit more detail about the future of all the existing applications? Will they continue to live on their own? Will they get merged into one? So let me go ahead and take that one.
Yeah.
So yes, the Dynamics 365 project operations will be our solution for project-based services organizations going forward. The Microsoft project will continue to offer project management and project portfolio management solutions. Looks like as a whole, that we will be retiring the project service automation license on 10/1. I believe that came over from Microsoft. And the project service automation capabilities and project management accounting capabilities currently within finance will be transitioned to this project operations module. Great, thanks. Great question.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a good amount there, right? The uniqueness of this product, right, begs that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Good transition.
Great. Good questions. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Listen, I really appreciate all your time. All those that are watching the recording as well, please feel free to reach out to info@arbellatech.com if you've got any questions, would like to discuss anything further. We'd be happy to provide any additional context. And thank you, John, on behalf of John and myself and the rest of Arbella. Hope you have a great rest of your day.